morning, good morning, good morning. How is everyone? This is the Fall Copywriting Mentorship Program second Q&A. So we are 2 weeks in at this point. I see Anthony on the call. Deborah, welcome guys, how's it going? We're a little bit early. So you can go ahead and say hi. Let me know if you can see my screen. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Giles just hopped on. Okay, cool. All right. Give everybody a little bit of a chance to trickle in here, and then we will dive right into the Q&A. You might hear my dog scratching around in their kennel in the background, so we are live. All right. Yelena, welcome. How's it going? I'm just waiting, just giving people some extra time to hop in here just to make sure that we're on. And I apologize in advance if my energy isn't quite up yet. Just got back from the airport around 2 a.m. last night and went to bed probably around 2:30, 3. And that was after being awake for almost 2 days straight. So I apologize. Apologize if the energy's not quite there, but we're going to get this thing done. Anthony, Daryl, Deborah, Giles, Yelena. Deborah, do you prefer Deborah or Debbie? Yeah, coffee helped me through it for sure. Good morning. Debbie, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, sweet. Right, Deborah, introduce yourself as Debbie. Okay, cool. I used to go by Luke or Lucas, but I prefer Lucas now, so I always tend to ask. All right, so everybody can see me, everybody can hear me, everybody can look at the screen. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. I think that Jenny has a hard time being on these because she's in another country. So we're just going to go down the line and kind of start from the beginning and answer as best we can. So first things first, Jenny asks about the super simple ROI equation that I posted in the group recently and how to talk about it in a sales conversation when you're not selling results that directly lead to money, such as improving and building systems into a business. So for everybody on the call, this can be relevant for you if you're using this course to learn how to write copy for yourself, and you're also using some of the modules and some of the content to learn how to teach things or sell at higher prices or anything like that. So it's a good question for not just Jenny's specific situation, so I want to give it the right amount of attention. Now, here's the thing. There's a couple things built into this question that I can tell. So the super simple ROI equation is designed to be simple. So when I put it up there, you know, we're talking specifically about costs because when your client pays you money, they're out a certain amount of money, just logically. But if they don't pay you money, then they are out a intangible amount of money. And your job as the salesperson, your job as the freelancer and the service provider is to help them see that intangible loss of money. And that's basically the best way to make a sale, is to show the person or help the person realize that they are going to lose more money and a lot more money if they don't hire you versus if they do hire you. because the transaction in their head is, okay, if I give this person X amount of money, then what do I get in return? Or if I'm paying this person a lot, am I able to recoup my investment? Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about the yawning. I apologize in advance. Okay, so a couple things built into this. It's designed to be super simple, so it's not designed for something that it's too hard to overthink. Basically, there are two parts of a transaction: the cost and the benefit. Costs and benefits. The first thing is just the cost. So if your service costs $5,000, then that is the amount of money that they have to pay you in order to get the service started. Now, the cost of not paying you is the cost of loss. Actually, let me see if I can just find the comment in here real quick. Let me jump into the copywriting mentorship group instead. Here we go. Let's see. And Jenny. Let's do this. Facebook search feature isn't the greatest, but okay, so cost of implementing your service is just your price, and the not implementing your service is the opportunity cost of potential gains, plus the risk of loss from poor or non-existent implementation, plus loss in time, energy, and manpower when they do it themselves, plus loss of money when they end up hiring you or someone else later on to clean up the mess. So let's go over them one by one. The opportunity cost of potential gains. So when you're performing a service for someone, there isn't a business owner on the planet who's going to pay you money in order to not make them more money than they pay you. And that's for business specifically. So if a business owner is purchasing your services for some reason, then they are doing it in order to gain, or they're doing it in order to stop a certain amount of loss, which is gain by itself. So most service providers for marketing materials like copywriters, graphic designers, web designers, things like that, are building things that are profit-centered. They're designed to create more money from the money that is invested into them. Things like legal, accounting, all of that kind of stuff are costs that help them not lose as much money, usually. Legal can sometimes grab more money, but for the most part, it's the fear of loss that drives those purchase decisions for those service providers. So as a copywriter, or as someone who, in Jenny's specific situation, is working out business systems and things like that, then you are looking towards a profit motive. Now, it gets a little more complicated when you can't just make a one-to-one comparison, where the copy will get them this many leads, which is equal to this many sales, which is this much over this period of time. That type of transactional ROI focused sale is a little bit more difficult to do when you're doing a system. However, I think that it's kind of self-defeating to think that operational systems don't have a easily calculable ROI. The first thing I would do, Jenny, is try to figure out every piece of their business that is impacted by the operational systems that you're going to help create. And you're going to want to focus on those two pieces of the transaction: the gain that they can get from the transaction and the loss that they're currently experiencing. So the gain they can get from having quality systems in their business is more time, more energy, more efficiency from their employees, things like that. They're all more things. They're all more questions. So write down as many of those more things as you can when you're looking at the operational systems you're about to create. What are they getting more of? And then go through and look at what are they getting less of, the things that are bad for their business, things like less waste, less less refunds because of bad processes, less employee dissatisfaction, which means they stick around longer, which means that they don't have to hire people over and over again. Things like that. So what are they getting more of? What are they getting less of? And then attach a monetary value to those. And one of the tricks that I like to use is I attach a conservative amount and I attach a expected or basically like I've seen other clients do this type number. I use both of those to kind of anchor things. The anchor price is a conservative price where you basically take, if you're looking at the more equation, you're like, okay, so if you get 1% more time over the course of the year, that equals, you know, X number of hours, which currently for your hourly rate means X number of dollars that you can put into your business. Things like that. Start, you know, attaching back to hourly rate, using their monthly revenue, and you know, just there are ways, especially when you're operating with a business service, to attach everything back to a physical monetary ROI. And so when you say it's not as easy to track, all the employees have hourly rates. All of the managers should understand that their time is also valuable. They're on salary, and so the amount of time and effort they put in is valuable. And the business owner themselves knows how much money they're taking home and can divide that basically by the amount of time they're working. Now that's probably going to freak them out for most of them, and that's why they need to have these operational systems. So you get that more focus and the less focus, and you attach ROIs to all of them. And then once they realize that hiring you is going to get them more money and it's going to help them save money by getting less of the bad stuff, then you've created a massive value for your service. And so when you drop the price, they're like, oh, only $5,000 to save $1 million this year, or only $5,000 to make $500,000, something like that. It's an easy decision. So your job throughout the sales process is to ask questions in order to get specific numbers about the more stuff and the less stuff that they are going to benefit from. That's the easiest way I can explain this without making it too complicated. So the opportunity cost of potential gains is if they do, say they pay you $5,000, they're out $5,000. But if they do not pay you $5,000, then they are risking every single dollar that they would have made if they did hire you and it was a successful project. And I can go super deep on this. I read an article a long time ago about poker, of all things, that explained this a lot better. And I forgot what formula and what specific thought process they used for it. But basically, it's a formulaic way to look at risk. So if you have this much money to gain, but there is X% chance that you're going to fail, then every time you make that decision, you make the difference, or you make the equivalent of what that major prize is minus or divided by the percentage. It's a little bit complicated. I don't want to go. The reason I'm trying to keep this simple is so that it doesn't get really confusing and there's not this huge equation to working out the ROI stuff. But if you really want to look at it deeply like that and actually bring up the potential for risk, then the way you calculate risk is basically saying, look, all the clients I've worked with so far have gotten these results, which means these are my average results, and this is my price, which means that hiring me is blankety blank. So the opportunity cost of potential gains is the entire amount of money that they lose by not hiring you. So if you're going to go make them $500,000, then they lose $500,000 by not hiring you versus paying your $5,000 fee. And if you're building business systems for a company, then they lose every dollar that they would have made from all the more stuff and every dollar they would have lost through the less stuff. And that is the cost. That's the opportunity cost there. The risk of loss from poor or non-existent implementation. So the opportunity cost is just existing in a vacuum. It's something that you get no matter what. Either you choose to invest and you pay the $5,000 with you, or you don't choose to invest and you lose all of this opportunity cost for what you're working on with your client. The risk of loss from poor or non-existent implementation is that if the business tries to do this themselves, even though they've already admitted that they need help because they've come to you as the expert to help them do it, then they run the risk of ruining things even more. And in order to quantify that, you basically take the more stuff and the less stuff and try and figure out how they would mess it up. You know, if they wouldn't get any of the more stuff, then that's something that they lose. They lose that money. It doesn't exist anymore. If they don't fix the less stuff, then they lose that money. And making that very apparent in monetary terms and stuff that they can agree to is part of what the 10X module is all about. Most of the time, you're just asking them questions and writing down numbers. And most of the time, your clients will not have the right numbers. And that is awesome if you're selling business systems, because then you say, look, you know, you don't have any of the information that you need to run this business. Therefore, you sincerely need my help. Let's see. Yeah, Yelena, I can jump into that for this question. But let me finish up. Loss of money when they end up hiring you later. This one's just kind of a little caveat. Like, if they try to do it themselves and they lose the time, energy, and manpower doing it themselves, and they lose the stuff by messing things up, they're also going to end up having to pay you or someone else to come in and clean it up. So this is all just added together in the cost of not working with you. And then you also want to make the benefits by using your more statements, like you're going to make more by doing these things more, and you're going to make more by doing these things less. You want to make that obviously massively more than your price. And at that point, it's a no-brainer. As long as you can actually deliver on the results that you are promising. And by doing that, just don't promise to write a 10%, you know, converting sales letter to cold traffic. It's unrealistic. But if you conservatively price or figure out what your prices are based on average percentage rates, like if you can get the sales page to convert to 1% to cold traffic, and you send X amount of traffic, you're going to make this much money, blah, 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 that sort of thing. So that's how you figure out those ROIs. And Yelena asked a question in the webinar thread that I think is a pretty good segue for this. Is this a good segue to touch upon pricing your own services, especially as a copywriter who is just starting out? How do I approach this? So how I actually approached it and how I teach it now is very different. How I actually approached it was I drastically underpriced myself in order to get clients that I could get results for, and then took those results and gradually built my clout over the period of 5 years, give or take. So my first sales letter was $300. I wrote it for $300. That was also, I think the first sales letter I was paid for was probably 3 years ago, or like maybe almost 4 years ago at this point. And that would not be what I would recommend now, because that was almost 4 years ago in Facebook time, in social media time, all that kind of stuff. Now you see people drastically underpricing their stuff, and it's, especially in the channels that we use here in this group, like the Cult of Copy job board, and some Facebook groups, things like that. People are used to that, they expect that, and you don't get as good of clients doing that because there's all these freebie seekers floating around. So I wouldn't recommend that you drastically underprice your stuff anymore, because you're just going to attract the bottom feeders who will never use your stuff and will waste your time and energy. So what I would do now is go through the module, 10x your freelance fees, because it shows you how to shift from pricing on time versus pricing on value. And this super simple ROI equation and what I just talked about, the more versus less, then it's up to you to decide how confident you are in the results that you can achieve. And the reason that I don't talk right away about exactly how I would price things or how I would create an offer, how I would go and get clients in the beginning, is because I feel like that's where people start to teach. And they don't have either the skill or the confidence in their skill yet to get that value that they want. So basically, there's a lot of people teaching these high ticket selling techniques, but the person who's now learning these techniques doesn't have that intrinsic confidence yet in their own abilities to make all of those techniques work. And on top of that, some of them don't even have the skill to actually deliver on the high ticket result that they're selling. So it's my little public service announcement, or public service to the marketing world, to make sure that I give you guys what is necessary before charging those high prices, like the big four and the big idea and the fifth stage and all the stuff that we're going to learn in this course. Does that make sense, Elena? I think when you're just starting out right now, the focus is to switch the conversation to value and then use that practice with that client to get as much money from you can from that client in terms of value. And then as you practice that, you're going to start talking with bigger and better clients over the course of this course and over the course of your career. And those clients will inevitably have more money, more of a budget, and hold copywriting in more esteem, and therefore pay you more money. If you can flip the conversation from costs to value in any conversation, then you can write your own ticket, because then all you have to do is figure out who to talk to who has the most money. Is that a good enough answer, Elena? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So that was Jenny's question. We spent quite a bit of time on that. Let us jump in to the next one. Anthony, I believe it was. Okay. How would you actually discover what the deadly sin that motivates your market is? I'm guessing. Are there certain phrases or wordings you look for? Is it just a feeling people are wanting? Okay, so discovering the quote-unquote deadly sin, like I talked about in the first Q&A call, which, Anthony, I'm not sure if you were here for the first Q&A call, but I would highly recommend going back and listening to these as we go. The deadly sin for your marketplace is essentially a bucket that you put a lot of different words, phrases, feelings, emotions, all of those kinds of things that you find in your research into. So you wouldn't use the word pride in a sales letter. You wouldn't use the word lust or wrath in a sales letter. And the reason being, nobody actually understands that they're feeling these deep down, but it's your job as a copywriter to understand that they're feeling them deep down and then translate those feelings into the marketplace. So as you're doing the research, you're going to start noticing trends in sentiment. You're going to start noticing trends in word choice. You're going to start noticing trends in everything that allows you to make a justification on which bucket you're going to dump these feelings into, which is the deadly sins. Now, that's the strategic answer. There are certain phrases that you can look for, but again, I don't want to tell you if you see this exact phrase, then it's definitely pride, because it's not always the case. You have to look at the research every single time. There isn't something I can give you to do that for you. The reason is because, one, language changes all the time, and there's nothing I can say that is always a dead ringer for one of these things. And on top of that, every single market is different every single time. So that's why marketers have not created this into a course yet, like how to discover the phrases that motivate your market. So the things you can look for on some of the bigger ones, like let's say sloth is one of them. Words like easy, push button, no effort, really short time frames. Those tend to be sloth focused. Like when I say really short, I mean like 48 hours, like lose 10 pounds in 48 hours, or lose 10 pounds without dieting, or withouts. But again, sometimes these are also just good copywriting practices because you want to show benefit without pain. But when you're looking for these things, you're going to start noticing that the motivation of the person is is hinging on something that you can put into these deadly sin buckets. And so if it's pride, then they're probably going to want to achieve something. They're probably going to want to get something, or make themselves look better than others in some way, shape, or form. Now, wrath is revenge or justice or something like that. So if they are looking at an offer that is going to give them back some power or get back at someone, or protect themselves against something they're angry at, something like that. There's lots of different phrases and words right now that are working, but it might change next week depending on the election. It might change, global geopolitics. It changes so often that it's really just a gut feeling on your part. And the best way to cultivate a gut feeling, which I think every copywriter has, is just do a ton of research, because your ability to communicate and understand other humans as a copywriter is usually intrinsic. Everybody has that ability. But most people don't do enough of the work on the front end to really feel strongly about what is motivating your marketplace. And then once you feel strongly about that, and you can justify your belief in that most of the person's core desire or primal desire and core needs are in this bucket, then you go out and test your assumption by actually making the offer that was written for that motivation. And then if it doesn't work, then you can go back to the drawing board and see why it doesn't work. So that's the best answer I can give you. I know it's probably not specifically what you were looking for, but the deadly sin is more of a bucket and not a thing that I can tell you. If they said this, then they mean this. All right, let's look at guiles. I can always do an example too, Anthony, if you want to look at an example. We can do that sometimes. Everything. Yeah, it's so Anthony says it, gotcha. So it's context heavy as well. Yes, everything in copy is context. Everything is context, because where they see your message, how they see your message, what mood they're in when they see your message, how they perceive it in their own mind versus another person, everything is context. Because in communication, everything is context. You can't get through a communicative message without factoring in context. It just doesn't work. So, all right, guiles. Any tips on segues? So when transitioning from bullets to social proof, social proof to making the offer. We're going to go through a module on process that's probably going to help you later down the line. But I'm not a fan of tips for questions like this. The reason being, so when you transition from bullets to social proof, or when you transition from social proof to making the offer, who told you that you need to put social proof before the bullets or after the bullets, or that you've got to flow in this particular way, or make the offer and then at the end, or that sort of thing? So this is template thinking, and I want to break you of template thinking, because templates are good tools to use once you understand the fundamentals. But I think that the fundamentals, Picasso, I think it was Picasso, said that you need to learn the rules like a master so you can break them like an artist, or something to that effect. I paraphrase very strongly on that one. But you have to learn the rules like a master in order to break them like an artist. So the rules in copywriting are not the templates. That's what people have tried to sell you over the last however long people have been teaching copywriting. The rules of copywriting are not the templates. You're not a good copywriter when you followed a specific methodology that someone wrote down. The reason why they're selling those things is because templates are easy to sell to you. They could simply say, look, I'm a good copywriter. I wrote a template. You should buy my template, and that's going to answer all of your problems forever. No, it's a good product. But those aren't the actual rules when it comes to copywriting. Copywriting rules are understanding your target market at an extremely deep psychological level, understanding what motivates them, understanding what the market's level of awareness is that you're targeting, understanding the sophistication of your competition, and understanding all of those fundamentals, and then understanding how to weave story into a conversation, understanding that when you're writing copy, it's more of a conversation between two people than it is a person screaming on the side of the street. Those are the rules. Those are the fundamentals. And so once you learn those, then you can break those rules like an artist in the context of, maybe I want to make the offer right up front. Like, the first thing they see is the offer. Why would I do that? Well, because if they're level 1 or level 2 awareness, then they've already seen a ton of stuff, and they're used to stuff, and they're used to seeing my competition's headlines. So if I want to capture their attention, but I know that they're at a high enough level of awareness to be interested in my offer, then why not throw the offer up first and use that as a pattern interrupt, because they're not used to it. That is breaking things like an artist. I've done that successfully in many different markets. Why? Maybe I'll put social proof first. Maybe I'll put social proofs on the side of the sales page all the way down, so that I don't have to have a specific testimonial section. It's just, as you read the copy, you see people saying how good things are. Mind Valley did a split test like that a few years ago, and I think that split test alone, putting testimonials about the product on the side of the sales letter, increased their conversions by like 30 or 40%, something like that. So the rules are not templates. The rules are the fundamentals. And so tips on segues isn't really relevant because it doesn't matter. Practical tip on getting the sales letter to flow and visualize. Okay. Can be that these many pages, I find it hard to keep scrolling through, remembering what's been said, not repeating information. 3 monitors. Okay. So yes, I think that most copywriters don't have 3 stacked monitors on there to keep track of their offer. I think it's a sense of overwhelm that is making you feel like you don't have a lot of control over what's being written. And so it's not necessarily a matter of getting the sales letter to flow and visualize easier in any particular way. I think the simple answer strategically is to edit. So don't worry about your first draft. Just let it flow. You can repeat yourself. It doesn't matter. It's going to look like a brick. But once you've done that, and once you've let it flow and you've had that conversation, quote unquote, then you can go back and edit and make sure you're not repeating yourself, not using the same words over and over and over again, things like that. So editing is extremely important to the entire process, but I wouldn't beat yourself up in the beginning. And if you're still having trouble visualizing the flow once you're editing, then you're probably too close to the project and you need to take a day off and then go back to it. Because when you hyper focus on the project, then you're going to start seeing double. You're going to start, not really understanding the flow, especially if there's stress around it. So if you're feeling like you're at that point, like you're editing and it still feels repetitive, then step away from it for a while, step away from it for a day, and then go back to it. That's my advice on that. Right. Yeah, so yes, it's absolutely more of an art form, Giles. Yeah, so he says he's following the 12-step PDF, which is good. So yeah, the template is training wheels. So don't make it feel like, I guess the best way I can say it for everyone on the call who's listening and everybody who's listening to the recording is, when I give you a template, that is not the be all end all. Those are training wheels. That's something that you can use because right now you haven't gone through the entire course and started really getting into your stride on the assignments and getting direct feedback. So take the template with a massive pile of salt and don't use it as the be all end all, because it's not. I personally do not like templates. I use them in the later stages of my copywriting when I use them. I don't use them in the beginning because I'm not a fan of being constrained that deeply when you're trying to really have a good conversation with someone in terms of sales. That's my personal stuff. A lot of this course is also going to teach you how to do things that work for you and your systems. Okay, so let's see. And all of this will start to really be brought together as soon as we start discussing your assignments, everyone. Because the reason that a lot of you guys are confused with copywriting and actually in this mentorship program in the first place is because you've seen the books and you've seen the courses and you've seen the templates and everything like that, and you're still confused. And that's absolutely natural because you've never had someone just straight up say, look, your transition didn't work for this reason in this particular piece of copy. And that helps it click for you. Without that connection, then a lot of the time you just have no context around what you're writing. So technically it might look perfect, but it won't work as a sales letter because you missed one of the big four, or the transition doesn't work, or it's the wrong product or whatever. So let's see, I understand we're looking ideally at a percentage of the promotion revenue that the course is producing, 10% of $10,000. So contract negotiations. This is a question about contract negotiations. I understand we're looking ideally at a percentage of the promotion revenue that the course is producing, 10% of $10,000 or $100,000. Do you add a clause? This will be paid even if the event only produces $50,000. So contract negotiations are twofold. First off, you want to be known as an advisor and not simply a person that is doing a thing in the project. An advisor gets paid more every single time. Now, as an advisor, you have the ability to dictate terms of how valuable your stuff is. And so practically speaking, you want to get paid as much as you possibly can for your efforts while still maintaining a good relationship with your client and a good testimonial and ROI for your client. That's the ethics behind it. So if you're looking to get a percentage of the promotion revenue, then there's a lot of stuff inside this question that I really want to talk about, but I don't know if we have time to really dive in. So just know that when you're negotiating a contract, you want to make it a win-win, but you also want to get as much money as you can for your services, especially if you're going to be providing valuable services like copywriting. So win-wins, but as much as you can win. The idea of getting royalties themselves is something that I always kind of counsel people on. So royalties are nice, but there's royalties and then there's royalties. There's the royalties of profits that don't exist yet that I'm extremely wary of. So if a person comes to you and says, yeah, I don't really have money for this project, so I can pay you in a percentage, or I can pay you in royalties when it does well. No. You'll notice that people like to offer percentages of revenue that doesn't exist yet. And people who have revenue don't offer percentages because they don't want to share that revenue with you. Unless it's a specific industry where it's sort of expected, in which case they tend to have an idea of how much they're going to pay you. Finance is one of those industries where typically they like to pay out royalties. Just understand that if you're getting a royalty, then your upfront fee is going to be less. And so if you are working with a client that you think is less than scrupulous, or you think is not really that savvy, then you are giving away a percentage of your profits based on your trust in them to actually not only execute the plan you give them and the marketing plan that they're going to do, but also follow up and pay you the way they should. Because you are the freelancer. If they want to screw you, then you have to go get your own lawyer and you have to chase them down yourself for your money. And even then, you've got to pay the lawyer, you've got to go through all of that, and then when you get the money, is it really worth it? So keep that in mind, guys. There's a lot I want to say about this, and we won't go into super detail this time, but the idea of getting a percentage of promotion revenue is not as cut and dry as it sounds. Always look at it from both sides of the coin, your side and your client side, and think to yourself, is it worth it to try and get an upside of this project versus getting a larger upfront fee. Okay, next one. Being that we are in the business of offering value in terms of marketing and copywriting, not just producing words, other essential marketing aspects. Good knowledge of. Okay, great question. We are actually going to answer that one as well. There's a module called the 25x4 rule, and that's going to show you that copywriting is only 25% of the marketing equation right now in today's world. So 25% of the marketing equation, it doesn't always mean that you as a copywriter are worth that full 25% that copywriting is. So a big thing that you're going to want to do is increase your skill and increase your ability to get paid at a level commensurate with 25% of the value of a marketing funnel. Now, once you've done that and once you are confident that you're getting paid your worth for that piece, then you can start looking at the other three components, the other three 25% parts of the marketing funnel that you can either add to your services or find a service provider to do for you so that you get a piece of that. But that becomes an agency model, not so much a solo copywriter model. A solo copywriter model is going to be built heavily on getting as much money for your copywriting services as possible, and then executing that copy quickly enough that you can move on to another client or start getting royalties from that program or from that product, or working with people as an advisor for higher fees or retainer fees, things like that. So that will be later in the course. All right, Debbie has had a client meeting, putting together a proposal. She's looking for website copy. Okay. Quiz, free giveaway lead magnet. We're going to make it work. Okay. She's already invested $10,000 at the big name agency that met with her for a day, but then didn't deliver the promised funnel map and done for you funnel. So, all right, I'm a little confused by this, Debbie. Let's start at the bottom. She invested $10,000 with an agency and then did not get what was delivered or what was promised, like completely, as in they just did not deliver anything. So they stole it from her? So they stole $10,000 from her, basically. Okay, well, I mean, that's legal then. Now, so there's a difference here, and this question is actually very important. So I'm not just trying to nitpick, because this tells you what you are going to experience from this client. When your clients start bringing up previous freelance relationships or previous vendor relationships, you need to listen very, very closely, because they're going to reveal exactly how they think about vendors who aren't you yet, and how they treat them, and how their brain works in terms of the back and forth between a client and a service provider. Okay, so if she was truly, literally defrauded, as in she paid $10,000 for an agency to meet with her for a day, deliver a promised funnel map and done for you funnel, including a webinar, and they did not deliver the things that they promised, which is fraud, then she has legal recourse to go after them. And she can obviously attack them and get her money back and get some damages and all that kind of stuff. Like, especially if they're a big name agency, she can go and get her money back or attack them legally, because $10,000 is a lot of money, but you can usually get more if you were legitimately defrauded. Now, if she was not legitimately defrauded, then you need to find out the details of what happened. Because if a big name agency offered to do something for $10,000 and they completed what they said they were going to do, as in they met with her for a day and they gave her the assets that they were expecting to give her, and she was simply not satisfied with their work, that is a completely different thing. Okay. So, and it's a very, very key distinction here. And I'm talking from personal experience with multiple different clients. There is a certain segment of the marketplace that will pay you a lot of money in order to use you as an excuse. And this is for everyone listening. This is for everyone who's on the recording. There is a significant, small, but significant portion of the marketplace that will pay you a lot of money to use you as an excuse. I don't know why. I still haven't figured out the psychology behind it, but the idea that when you get higher ticket clients, those people go away is not always true. I found more of them at the low end, the $500, $800, $300 end, but even at high ends, $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, there are people who will pay you money to use you as an excuse if you are a service provider. They like to buy services that cost a lot of money and then not deliver on their end in some way, shape, or form, and then blame the service provider. I've had this with a webinar client when I was super young. I've had it with a sales funnel client when I was super young in this game, where things were delivered, but the client needed to get me work and didn't, and yet I was blamed for the failure of the project. So that's why I want to start down here and not up here, right? She's invested a certain amount of money, a large enough amount of money, with an agency for a specific result. If that agency defrauded her, then you said that she graciously walked away. If it was true fraud, then she didn't need to walk away. Now, if it was not true fraud and it was a sticky situation, then you want to know what that sticky situation is all about, because it will affect you as a freelancer. I guarantee it. Right. And so if she was feeling, so Debbie says, I don't know enough about the details. I suspect she didn't want to make a fuss after they spent the day together. So, like I said, it's a very cut and dry thing here. Either they defrauded her and did not give her the thing that they were paid for, which is fraud, or they did deliver what they were promised, or what they promised and what they got paid for, and she was not happy with it for some reason, or there was some sort of miscommunication in the project. And there's kind of an in-between thing here where if she didn't get stuff delivered versus them not getting stuff delivered and all sorts of that, right? Which is the exact type of stuff you want to listen to in the conversations about those things, because it will give you a window into how they're going to treat you. So with that said, let's go up here. All right, had a client meeting and putting together a proposal, website copy, homepage about, product description for a core program. Okay, quiz as a lead magnet. Free giveaway lead magnet, 3 to 5 pages. So all of this stuff, and I understand, Debbie, that the primary service that you offer right now is content. So to me, that looks like a content proposal rather than a copywriting proposal, even for the quiz, because this is just cut and dry stuff. You know, I need website copy, homepage, about page, product description. Product description, I am curious what that means, because a product description is just a little blurb, or is it an entire sales message, a sales letter? Because a sales letter is a description, it's just a really well written one. Quiz as a lead magnet, free giveaway lead magnet, 3 to 5 pages. So this is content focused. Okay. Deborah says that for the client relationship with the last agency, it took 2 months to get the webinar done, and she was unhappy with it. Okay? And the funnel never appeared. Interesting. Okay. So also, it depends on contracts too. Like, what was the agreed upon date for completion? If they said, yeah, we'll get it to you in a week, and it took them 2 months, that's fraud. If it and if it was under-delivered, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff there legally that that she can that she would be able to do if it was true fraud, especially if the funnel was never delivered. So let's see. This is content. Content is not the same value as copy because you can't attach an ROI to it as easily. But if you talk about this in terms of value, like Module 10 or Module 2 talks about 10x your fees, then the value of having solid website copy is that the hope, I guess, is that more people who hit her page will then convert into customers than are currently converting. And the quiz as a lead magnet means that she will get more value from having more leads, and a quiz is one of the best ways to attract leads. Therefore, the quiz is valuable. The free giveaway lead magnet needs to be a specific thing that is extremely interesting to their target market, and that research is valuable, and the writing is valuable. So look for the intrinsic pieces of these that are actually valuable and attach that to a valuable price that makes sense. But it's also not none of these things are directly related to an ROI unless she has a very specific number that she knows her leads are worth. I worked with a client once that knew for a fact that every email she got into her email list was worth $25, which means over the lifetime of that customer, or over the lifetime of that lead, which means that we were able to validate an ROI based on the amount of leads we brought in. So we will make this work regarding the proposal. Expecting it to be a long-term relationship, future projects, email series, 4-video launch series. So when dealing with entrepreneurs, they always have future projects, always. I don't like to discuss current projects in the context of future projects. So current projects are talked about at least in a vacuum, because when you start talking about future projects, all you're doing is adding to your workload without any specific amount of relevance to the price of the project you're talking about right now. They're not related at all. All they're doing is showing you that there's a potential for you to make more money with them down the line, and that using that as leverage in order to get you to charge less now because they want a deal or whatever, they want a longer relationship. They're basically saying, like, make me happy right now and we'll probably maybe sort of work together in the future. Almost all clients will tell you they have future projects in the pipeline because every entrepreneur always has future projects. The current project you're discussing is the only thing you need to talk about. That's it, full stop. Unless they want to bring in an email series and then you can start discussing the price of that, or the 4-video launch series, and then you can start discussing the price for that. Only talk about the hyper-relevant right now project. Do not allow future projects to cloud the discussion because it's only going to reduce your ability to get the right amount of value for the project. It's only helpful for the other client because it makes you think that you're going to make more money in the long run, and it's basically kind of like an opportunity scam. There's been every single client I have ever worked with has said that they have multiple projects going on, and only 2 or 3 of them have ever panned out with actual extra work that comes in with those real projects that they were talking about. And I've worked with hundreds of clients, or sorry, over 100 at this point. I don't think it's 200 yet. So that, to give you some context, that's the numbers that I'm working with. Yeah, and that's fine. Having the conversation on where you want to start is good. That means you're having the right kind of trusted advisor conversations. But never let the future projects eat into the value of the current project that you're going to offer, because it does tend to happen. Okay, so how do you price them? That's all of module 2, is how you price these things based on value. But I know exactly what you're going through right now, Debbie, as far as the conversation that you're having with this client. They've invested a decent amount of money with an agency, been burned, and they did not get what they were promised according to them, or they're unhappy with that relationship according to them. They now are using that to basically say that they're out of money for what they're currently doing for you or with you, and yet they need a specific amount of work, and then they need a bunch of long-term work, and you've both mutually agreed that you want to make this work for the lowest price possible. But keeping in mind, she has already demonstrated a willingness and ability to pay up to $10,000 for a webinar. So when you're discussing things like 4-video launch series, a new webinar, and I already talked about revenue share with Giles, email series, things like that for the opt-ins. All this, $10,000 or more. This, $10,000 to $15,000 most likely, given her previous price point for one webinar. Emails with the opt-ins, $100 per email. And that's what we're discussing in terms of pricing here. So, and that's just average. Honestly, just good copywriters charge those. Those are not exorbitant fees. Like, you want to go work with Gary Benchavenga for a 4-video launch series, it's going to cost you $100 grand. A new webinar from John Benson is going to cost you 75 grand. You know, things like that. So in knowing exactly what you're going through now, because I've been here, I've done things like this, I've talked with clients like this, I know I can just almost picture exactly who I talk and who I had these conversations with in the past. Use the stuff that I teach in module 2 to center the conversation around value, and that is how you'll figure out what the price is, by understanding what the true value is. Now, I will say, if you've had a conversation, and this is true for everyone listening and everyone listening on the replay, the value-based conversations are extremely eye-opening for you as a freelancer, because not only does it shift the conversation from how much do you charge for this into this is why I want this thing and why it's valuable to me, it shifts that entire conversation. That alone is extremely eye-opening and powerful for a lot of people. Now, what you get to see is how full of shit your client is, or your prospect is. Because if you have a conversation around value, and you have a conversation around the true conservative ROI on what you guys are doing together, then as long as those numbers add up and they're not ridiculous, so you're not like, oh yeah, we can make $10 million from this tomorrow. As long as you're like, well, if we get a standard 1% conversion rate to cold traffic and your product is $1,497 and you're going to drive 100 people into that product for $100 and convert one person, then you're going to make an ROI of $1,397 per day or per 100 people that you drive into the funnel. And so now you're spending $100 to make $1,397, and that's compoundable, and you can increase that based on the traffic, based on the audience. And so realistically speaking, this sales message is going to be worth this amount of money over this period of time. Really simple math. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then you get them to agree. Does the 1% thing make sense? Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's really conservative. I'm like, okay, so that's a conservative number. Like if we do better, like one of my clients got a 2.9%, then obviously we double or triple that. But what we're looking at conservatively here is this. And then you throw out the number, and the number is going to be big, because if they can throw 100 people per day into a funnel for $100, and it pops out $1,397 per day, you just multiply that by 30, and that's what it's per month, and you multiply that by 12, and that's what it is per year, and that's how much the funnel is worth in the first year, but based on a 1% conversion rate. And they look at that number, and they're going to go, holy shit, I'm a millionaire. And then you get to say, well, the price of this funnel is blank, and you drop the price. And if they say, oh, I could never afford that, then they're basically just telling you that everything that they thought about and everything that you just talked about in terms of value is something they do not believe in, and something that they do not feel is possible for them, even though you just laid out the numbers. So you get to find out how full of shit your client is, and how much they actually believe in their own product, and how much they, how savvy they are in business. And so it's eye-opening for you in two ways. You get to talk about the value, and you get to actually see into your client's soul on how they perceive value. Does that make sense, everyone? All right, let me know if that makes sense, guys. I see Debbie and Giles. I can see everyone who's not paying attention right now. It gives me a little attentiveness icon. All right. Okay. So those are all of the Q&A questions, and we are right on the dot 10 a.m. right now. So if you have any other questions, then we can save them until the next Q&A, or you can ask them in the group if they're smaller. Don't require like a big answer the way that these have. The assignment that you guys are working on is due Friday at midnight, and then the hot seat will be next week for the first assignment. If you joined later in the course and you have not reached out to me in terms of the assignment or Jessica, then, and you're worried about it, then let us know. But for everyone who joined when the course started, due date's Friday. Most people who joined afterward, due date's still Friday. And yeah, we'll get to discuss that next week on the hot seat. I think those are going to be really helpful for you guys to see what it looks like on actual copy and how this stuff is truly applied. No problem, guys. All right, thank you all for your attention. Thank you for your time this morning. I'll get this recording up as quick as we can. Appreciate you dealing with my low energy in the beginning. And yeah, have an awesome one. Assignments due Friday, and I will talk to you guys next week on the Q&A or in the group over the next few days. Have a good one, guys.